Chapter 1 in use. Telephone conversation between two friends.
Hi Anne, it's Jane.
Hello, it's been ages since I last heard from you. How are you?
Not too well, actually. I've had the flu for about a month. I take after my mum, she's always ill.
Hadn't you better call the doctor?
I'm rather reluctant to do that. And anyway, there's no point. He can't help me.
Yes, but you may as well see him. You could go on your day off.
I suppose so. I don't think I could cope with another month like the last one. I think you are much better at handling illness than I am. Anyway, what's been going on in your life?
I've just found a new flat. Actually, it's in a very posh street.
Show off. I bet it's lovely.
Well, you know how choosy I am, and I'm much better off than I was a few years ago, so I can afford to live in such an area. You'll have to come round when I've got the place done up.
I'd love to. Incidentally, did your cat turn up? I asked round everyone at work, but no one had seen it.
Oh yes, he soon came back. He missed being made a fuss of and was fed up having to survive on stale food.
What a turn up for the books. I thought he was gone forever. I'm just going to turn down the television. Hold on a second.
Okay.
Did you know Manuel's parents are coming over from Spain next month? I'm quite looking forward to it. I'd like to ask you over. They'd love to meet you. It will be very handy having his mum here. She's a wonderful cook.
Great. Unfortunately, if it's next month, I'll have to turn you down. I'm going off to France for a few weeks. Peter has a flat in the south, and I thought instead of increasing my overdraft by going to the Caribbean, I might as well go to France again, even though I've been there quite a bit this year.
You lucky thing. I've just remembered. I still haven't got my own back on you for going on at my mum about how I've gone off her cooking. You shouldn't have told her.
Oh, stop making a fuss. She asked me why you always go on to a Chinese restaurant directly after eating her dinner. I thought, what's the point in lying? I'm sorry if I came over as being rather rude.
Don't worry. I was going to own up to her anyway. Would you like to come over tomorrow night, or are you busy?
I have a few letters which must go off by Friday, but I'd love to see you. What time shall I turn up?
Well, if you've got nothing better to do, you may as well come over for dinner at about 7.
Lovely. See you tomorrow at 7.
Directors' meeting.
Before we discuss the fall in this year's turnover, there are a couple of points I'd like to go over. Firstly, I must thank John for fixing the computer system when it suddenly went off last week. His in-depth knowledge of computers has really come in handy. However, we can't afford to let this happen again.
I didn't hear about this. What's been going on?
We can't afford the time to go into details now, but I think some of the staff are all having an off day at the same time, and all I'm saying is that we can't go on like this.
I think we'd be better off without a few of them. I know it's not always good policy to increase the turnover of staff, but if we want to reverse the downturn in trade we've been experiencing, we have to improve the quality of our staff.
I wish somebody would tell me what all the fuss is about.
Well, if you had turned up to our last 3 meetings, you'd have been aware of the stalemate we've reached.
What on earth has come over you?
Now calm down. Wait a minute, I can hear the fire alarm going off. We better go over to the other office.
Conversation between mother and child.
Mum, have you heard about John?
No, what happened to him?
Well, he was going off to night school when he saw a firework lying in the road. Not thinking that it was alive, he trod on it and the thing went off and burnt his leg. He was taken to hospital where they told him it might be quite a while before he can walk properly again.
You see, I've been telling you for ages how dangerous fireworks are. Have you come round to my way of thinking now?
Not really, it was his fault for treading on the firework. Oh yes, Mum.
What, my dear?
That cheese you gave me for lunch yesterday had gone off.
Really?
Either that or the bread was stale.
Impossible. You're just too fussy. Oh, by the way, have you seen the handy camera your dad has just bought?
Wow, he must have quite a number of them by now.
At least 5.
Can I go out and play football with Peter now?
Only if you do your shoelaces up.
Okay, bye.
Chapter 2 in use. Letter from Lisa to Patricia.
Dear Pat, I've been meaning to write to you for ages. What have you been up to? I bumped into Alice the other day, and she told me that you've just been taken on by one of the biggest banks in the city. You really have landed on your feet. I also understand that you've been dropping John some hints that you don't want to go out with him anymore, but he's been too thick to take them. I don't want to be rude, but is it because he's so stuck up, or is it due to his nastiness, making you feel awkward in front of his friends? Anyway, it'll surely go down well with your parents. You always told me how appallingly he behaved towards them. I've been trying to keep up to date with all my work, but to be quite honest, the job is beginning to get to me. Apparently, according to my boss, the firm is being sued by 4 companies who are owed money. Don't get me wrong, I like the people, and the money's good, but I could do with a change of scene. And besides, I'm not really up to doing the work which I've been asked to take on. The company used to stand for efficiency and honesty, but recently it hasn't been able to keep up its standards. I don't know if I've told you before, but my dad's intending to stand for mayor this year. Personally, I think he should stick to what he's good at, that is, being bossy at his office. I can't answer for the rest of the family, but I think he's bound to come unstuck. Nobody can work out why on earth he wants to do it. Anyway, I'd love to see you soon, so that we can catch up on each other's news and gossip. I wish you weren't living so far away. All my love, Lisa.
Two builders working at a house.
What's up?
Peter's just spilled paint all over the dining room floor. I don't know why the boss took on such a clumsy idiot. And on top of that, last week he didn't get to work until 11 o'clock because he said he was coming down with something.
Apparently, it's all over between him and his wife, but they are still living together to keep up appearances to the rest of the family. I feel sorry for the man.
I don't. I think he's got a nasty streak in him, and we could do without his stupid comments as well.
It's going to be awkward for the boss to dismiss him just out of the blue. For the time being, he'll have to let him carry on.
I don't think he'll stand for his clumsiness for much longer.
I must admit, he's a bit slow to catch on, but if you look into all the things going on in his life, you'll understand why nothing's worked out for him.
Newsreader.
There has been a major breakthrough in peace negotiations between the Serbs and the Croats. They have signed a new peace treaty which will go down as the first major agreement between the two peoples. A spokesman for the European Community said that it was hoped that both countries would feel legally bound by the document and that this current mood for peace would be kept up.
Today, a man by the name of John Smith was prosecuted under the Noise Protection Act for keeping his neighbours up during the night with his parties. Neighbour Hazel Coombs said, "We knew he was up to something when we saw him pushing in the queue at the off-licence with 3 boxes of lager. My young kids were kept up for several nights because of him and his mates, and I think he's got a lot to answer for." When Mr. Smith was told that his fine and legal costs could work out to be over £1,000, he was stuck for words.
Chapter 3 in use. Magazine article. A trip to London. I was very nearly put off the idea of visiting London by my sister, who told me the streets were filthy and you could be held up by muggers if you found yourself in the wrong part of town. However, I've had a rewarding experience here, having been put up by a friend in a cosy semi-detached house which he has kept spotlessly clean just for my benefit. I have taken advantage of his hospitality and he has put himself out to make me feel at home. I don't really want to bother him, but as it turns out, he rather enjoys being a host and guide. The only thing I found to be a bit tricky is driving on the left, but when it comes down to it, it's worth getting used to. I just can't be bothered to take the tube. I do find some of the customs a bit strange too. For instance, it's quite unheard of in my country to see adults eating chocolate whilst walking down the street. I'd get severely told off if I did that back home. Yesterday we were thinking of calling on the Queen, but unfortunately she wasn't in. I gather that she's trying to cut down on royal visits, but there are some which she just can't call off. I must admit I was a bit put out to be turned away from St Paul's Cathedral just because I had no change for the entrance fee. I took free entrance to a church for granted. What on earth has come over these people? The worst thing I've had to put up with is the unpredictable weather. Last Saturday, a group of us gathered together under Big Ben. Our guide's first comment was, "Hasn't it turned out nice?" And then, out of the blue, the rain came down. We all frowned in frustration, but we knew it served us right. We had been warned. Take an umbrella wherever you go. 2 colleagues at lunch.
Have you heard about Steve?
No, what's up?
He's handed in his notice. Actually, he'd probably have been sacked anyway. Apparently, the other day, the boss was very straightforward with him and told him that no one was prepared to put up with his nagging any longer, and he was putting people off their work. If you see him, don't bring it up.
No, of course not. Hasn't he just broken up with his wife?
Yes, and he keeps trying to put off the divorce because he can't afford to pay for the upbringing of his 2 kids. And also, he still loves his wife dearly. She claims she went off him when he started taking her for granted.
Is he going to have a big leaving party?
Yes, next Friday. I hope there'll be a good turnout for it.
Look at that guy. This is supposed to be the non-smoking part of the restaurant. If he doesn't put his cigarette out, he should be turned out for putting people off their dinners. It's a shame, because I really enjoy coming here. It breaks up the day, and they haven't put up the prices for over a year.
Yes, it is nice here, but I wonder what's holding up our chicken. The waitresses are well turned out here, but they're a bit slow.
Do you want me to follow it up, or do you think making a fuss is frowned upon in this restaurant?
No, don't worry. Maybe the oven is cut out, or the chef is breaking up a fight between the two cooks.
I'm sure there's a more straightforward reason than that.
Chapter 4 in use, Teacher and Students. I think it's best to get the homework over with first, then we can pick up where we left off last lesson. I thought that this class was more on the ball than Class B, but it's quite apparent that it's the other way round. I don't enjoy having a go at you, but your homework was appalling. I think my problem is that I've let you all get away with murder during most of the year, and now it's too late to hope that your work will pick up before the exams. Anyway, I'm sorry to fly off the handle at you like this, but something has to be done to get my message across. It makes no odds to me whether you passed your exams or not. It's entirely up to you. Let's just run over some of the questions. I'd like the girls to give me their answers to all the odd questions, and the boys can handle the even ones.
I can't remember the answers. I just have to make them up if I'm asked.
Right. The girl sitting in the third row behind John. What's your name?
Barbara.
Oh, yes, of course. Barbara, what was your answer to the first question? Which king came after George III?
George II.
Do you know, that's such a stupid answer. I can't even be bothered to get annoyed. Didn't you pick up anything in your mathematics classes? I can understand people making the odd mistake, but how on earth can George II come after George III?
Poor Barbara. She's always being made fun of by the teachers.
I can't get over how slow she is to catch on. What are the odds on her ever getting a question right?
I've no idea, but there doesn't seem to be anyone she can turn to for help. She's constantly at odds with her parents, who didn't take up the headmaster's invitation to come up to the school to discuss her problems.
Jane, instead of talking, perhaps you could give me the correct answer.
Was it George IV, sir?
Brilliant, but it still doesn't make up for all the other questions you got wrong. Now, who would like to have a go at answering question 2? David, perhaps.
How come I always get the difficult ones?
How was Queen Victoria related to William IV?
Pardon?
Don't make out you didn't hear the question. Just have a go.
She was his mother.
Do you know, this class is driving me up the wall. If Queen Victoria succeeded William IV to the throne, how could she have been his mother?
Why do you always pick me up on every little mistake I make?
Because you have failed 3 history papers in a row, and the odds are that you'll fail in the summer too.
I think I'll get by in life without being a history professor.
Well, one thing I can say is that you're not the odd one out in this class. You're all as thick as each other. Let's call it a day, but there are some odd points I'd like to run through next time. Interview with Prime Minister.
I'd like now to turn to the question of tax rises. A lot of us in the media can't make out the government's policy on this. Are they coming? If so, when?
There are no immediate plans to increase taxes, but we can't rule out the possibility in the future. I'll be taking up the matter with my colleagues in the Cabinet within the next few weeks, but I'd like to pick up on a point you raised earlier. This country has survived a severe recession against all the odds, and now we have to make up our minds as to whether we want to lead the industrial world once again. We have to turn mere survival into economic success, and I believe we've got the potential.
Some people find it odd that we have only 2 months to go before the European elections, and the government still haven't got over the problem of who is going to make up the various committees on European health and education.
As you know, we've had rather a hectic domestic schedule lately, but without wishing to dodge the question, we shall let the press know of any news concerning this matter in due course.
Prime Minister, thank you for allowing us to take up your valuable time.
Letter from Jane to Tracy.
Dear Tracy, so sorry I haven't written for quite a while, but I'm off to France next week to see my cousin Peter, so things have been a little hectic. On top of that, I've picked up the flu and have been trying to get over it for about a month. In fact, to be perfectly honest, my life has been upside down recently. I've split up with Justin, again. I should have listened to you in the first place. You're quite right, he's definitely a dodgy character. My problem is that I was so much in love with him that whenever he was nasty, I let him off. Anyway, I'm sure he was picking up other women, or at least trying it on with them, when I wasn't keeping an eye on him. Everyone says we're bound to make it up, because we've had so many rows in the past. But this time it really is all over. To change the subject, Peter has decided to take up residence in France. I can't get over it. Can you imagine that Peter, who likes to drink his English beer in one go, is going to become French? Whilst I was there, he was picked up for speeding, and he made up some story that I was about to have a baby. He hasn't changed. One more thing. Are you coming over this Christmas, or are you going to put it off once again? Sorry to keep going on at you, but you're bound to miss a great time if you don't turn up. Get back to me on this as soon as you can, because my parents want me to tell them if it'll be necessary to put you up. If you do come over, you'll have to pick up all my parents' bills, and you can make the cheque out to me. Only joking. All my love, Jane.
Chapter 5 in use. Telephone conversation between mother and daughter.
Hello, Mum. Who on earth have you been talking to all this time? I've been trying to get hold of you for ages.
I've been speaking to my friend, Patty.
You only saw her on Friday afternoon. Surely you must run out of things to say.
Well, the thing is, she's just realised she's been taken in by the man who sold her new car. You know how gullible she is. She just bought the first one that came along. Apparently he told her that it was one of the most sought-after cars on the market.
What's wrong with it?
Funnily enough, everything. It's a wonder the car goes at all. Fixing it is going to be a daunting task, but I told her to get on to Mike, the mechanic. Mind you, I dread to think what he's going to charge her.
Anyway, what have you been up to?
Well, last night your father and I fancied seeing a film. We managed to get hold of tickets to see that Clint Eastwood one with Meryl Streep. It received rave reviews in all of the papers, but we thought it was overrated. Actually, I dropped off in the middle. After the film, your father said he could murder a hamburger, so we went to Jimmy's. Dad was so hungry that while we were waiting for our hamburgers, he had some crisps to be getting on with. He really showed me up. You know how Dad gets so carried away with his food.
You're always picking on him. No wonder he dreads going out to eat with you.
Oh, you're bound to stick up for him, being his daughter. You're biased. Anyway, how are the kids?
Well, Jamie's been a bit under the weather, although I think his studies are coming along well now. I just hope he's going to get through his exams. There's so much information he needs to take in. It doesn't look fun at all. I dropped him off at school the other day, and he said to me he didn't know how he was going to get through the next couple of weeks. But I told him that he underrates himself too much, and that if he wants to get on in this world, he must have confidence. At last, the message seems to be getting through.
Oh, good. And the other one?
Jane, she's fine. Last month she said her classmates were looking down on her because she got on so well with all her teachers.
I'm sure they're all jealous. She probably gets a lot of hassle from all the boys who fancy her.
She does, mind you. She's perfectly capable of sticking up for herself. Anyway, we're all dying to see you. Why don't you come over for dinner tonight?
Well, I have a little bit of work to be getting on with, but I'd love to see you and the kids. Is 8 o'clock all right?
Fine. Partners meeting.
It's getting on for 7 o'clock. I think we should begin. Come along, let's all take our places. Now, I suppose everyone's aware of the takeover bid issued by Atlas Limited last week.
Yes, but I don't fancy their chances of raising the capital before the offer period runs out. Apparently, business has dropped off in recent months.
But things are looking up for us. There's a new act which has just got through Parliament which protects the selling company when the purchaser can't raise the finance.
Who cares what the law says? If they don't have the money, the legal outcome's irrelevant. I knew this whole scheme would be a flop.
I think your pessimism is uncalled for. I can't work out how you got hold of the idea that Atlas don't have any funds.
I'm not so easily taken in. I know why their managing director is acting in such a funny way and is so difficult to get hold of these days. He can't cope with the hassle of taking over another company. Actually, I dread to think what will happen to us if he remains the head of Atlas.
I think you've got hold of the wrong end of the stick. Why don't you all come along with me tomorrow to their offices and see what they have to say? Chapter 6 in use. Policeman and victim of burglary.
Hello, madam. May I come in? I've come round to investigate the burglary that was reported last night.
Oh, thank you, officer. Actually, I was on the verge of going out, but please come in. Sorry, the place is in a state, but the burglars have been through everything. They've messed up the whole house. I don't think I'm ever going to come to terms with this.
Well, it'll probably take quite a while to sink in. Many people don't realise what it's like to go through a burglary.
I can understand the point of taking valuable items, but what do they get out of vandalism?
It's very hard to say, madam. When we do catch people like this, it's very difficult to get anything out of them.
What are the odds on you catching these ones?
It depends on what we've got to go on. If they made a few slip-ups and left some clues, our chances are greater. But often, even if we catch them, they get off if there are no witnesses. What's actually missing?
Fortunately, not that much. A few bits of tacky jewellery in the video. It's just as well I had most of my valuable jewellery with me. Also, it looks like they messed around with the television, but for some strange reason they left it here.
Where were you for the evening?
Well, my husband and I run a catering business, and we were out at a function. I reckon they must have watched us leave the house, otherwise they wouldn't have known there was nobody in. We always make a point of leaving some lights on and the radio as well. When we got home, we were actually drenched because of the pouring rain. The last thing we expected was to come up against something like this. I honestly feel as though I'm going to crack up.
Please try to calm down, madam. Once you've seen through these first few days, you'll be fine. You just have to talk yourself out of it. No one was hurt and very little was stolen.
I suppose I'm feeling a little hard done by, but I'll get over it.
Well, I'll be getting off now. Please call me if you need any help.
Shop assistant and customer.
Good morning, Mr. Miller.
Hello there, Jim.
What can I do for you, sir?
Well, I've been putting off doing up the house, and now I realise it's a task I can't get out of. I need to buy some extra large picture hooks.
Unfortunately, we've just run out of them.
Is it possible for you to get hold of some for me?
Well, they're quite hard to come by these days. Is it not possible for you to make do with these medium-sized ones? I think the company I use is going to scrap the larger ones.
If that's all there is, I'll have to make the most of them. Also, I could do with some stain remover. Yesterday, we went to the airport to see my brother off to Germany. As I got out of the car, I dropped a small bottle of whiskey I was carrying in my coat pocket. It went all over the front car seats. I'm not sure if I'll be able to get the stain off.
The best thing to use is hot water and salt. Most of the stuff on the market at the moment is not what it's cracked up to be. They don't even get rid of simple food stains, let alone those caused by alcohol.
Oh really, Jim, you do crack me up. You're not supposed to talk me out of buying things.
Well, if I tried to trick you, you'd see through it. I'm much better off being honest with my customers. Anyway, you can buy some salt from me if you wish.
Can't you come up with anything more advanced than salt and hot water?
It's not ordinary salt. It's a special kind which caters for awkward stains. One tin like this should see you through the year.
Really? That's very handy. OK, I'll take one. I hope the instructions are easy to grasp. I'm really clumsy with these things. Anyway, thank you very much for your help. I'll see myself out. Goodbye. Husband and wife at dinner table.
How was your day?
I had quite a bit of hassle in the office today. Apparently, news has got out that the company are about to lay off about a quarter of the staff.
So they're going to go through with it then? I thought that you and the other directors decided that it was all uncalled for.
It's Simon. He has come up with some new ideas of reshaping the company.
Oh, I might have known such a ruthless scheme would come from him.
It's not a question of being ruthless, it's what is necessary. This time I go along with him. We have to cater for the modern client who doesn't need 10 people handling his affairs.
It's just as well Simon's retirement is coming up, otherwise he'd have to make himself redundant.
I'll stop going on about him. He's a lot more easygoing than you make out.
Just to change the subject, has your client, Mr. James, come up with the money he owes the company?
It's funny that you should mention that. It came up at a directors' meeting we had yesterday lunchtime. I went through all the details with the others, and then we decided we should get off a fax to him straight away. It was left for me to do, and I just cringed when I read the fax back to myself. It's so embarrassing asking old clients to pay up when you know they haven't got the funds.
Yes, but he's been messing you around for ages. It's about time you stopped taking such a laid-back attitude towards him.
Do you think you could lay off having a go at me for just 5 minutes?
Of course, darling. Enjoy your dinner.
Chapter 7 in use. Interview with musician.
Before the interview gets underway, I'd like to give you a rundown on what's likely to come up. I won't be trying to catch you out with tricky questions, otherwise we'll wind up having a row. I'd firstly like to concentrate on the earlier years of your career, before your music really caught on, and then, without putting you on the spot, I'd like to talk about your family life and future plans. Is that okay?
Fine.
Okay, then let's begin. You started as a drummer, but turned into a singer. How did that come about?
Well, I got myself into a rut playing drums. I needed to plunge myself into some other form of expression, so I had a go at singing. I was surprised, but I really took to it, even though it took me a while to get to grips with all these scales. I started writing songs as well, which at first the other guys in the band couldn't get into. Then we called in the famous producer Mike Smith to see if he could spot where we were going wrong. He said our sound was too gimmicky and that our music needed to undergo a complete change of direction. We listened to him, even though at first we were slagged off by all the music critics, but then things started to work out.
Are you saying that it was Mike Smith who brought about your newfound success?
In many ways, yes. But also you have to say that it was the members of the band who had the guts to take the plunge. We risked losing all our fans, but luckily it all turned out fine.
As a travelling musician, I don't suppose you've had much time to spend with your family.
That's right. I didn't know what I was letting myself in for when I first started touring. It was great fun, of course, but I didn't get the time to see my wife and kids. I used to feel that my success as a musician was overshadowed by my failure as a husband and father. But now I think I was unfairly running myself down. I've always had a soft spot for both of my daughters. Now they've grown up, we still have a lot of fun together. They're always winding me up about my old-fashioned clothes. They say that I haven't got a clue on how to dress.
And what are your plans for the future?
Who knows? Maybe I'll spend the rest of my days on a Pacific island, unwinding to the rhythms of the ocean. Conversation between father and daughter.
Where on earth did you get to last night?
Oh, I just popped into Sylvia's.
Popped in? You could have fooled me. You must have spent half the night round there.
Well, I didn't know if she would be in, but I went round on the off chance. I wanted to congratulate her on getting into Cambridge.
Sylvia? Cambridge? What's got into you? You must be winding me up, of course.
No, I'm not. I tell you what, she worked damn hard to pull through those exams. During the run-up to the exam, she never went out once. You can't imagine how nervous she became. She's highly strung enough as it is. Anyway, she's very happy. As a joke, she told her dad that Cambridge was too stuck up for her and she preferred to go to Leeds.
Did he fall for it?
Oh yes, he wondered what had come over her and told her to get a grip on herself. However, he soon realised she was having him on and they both laughed about it later. To change the subject, would you mind running me down to Peter's after dinner? Apparently he got injured playing football last Sunday and can't go out.
Are you sure he's not just making a meal of it to attract your sympathy?
Dad, of course not. He'd know I'd catch him out if he tried anything on like that.
Very well, but don't come back late this time.
Chapter 8 in use. Peter's Diary, 21st of September. Today it really dawned on me that I don't fit in with the rest of my class. We were asked to sort out our desks and it stood out a mile that mine was the messiest. I've just never got round to tidying it up. John was told that he was the neatest person in the class. This went to his head, and now he's showing off that he knows how to get round the teacher, Mr. Brown. When the teacher inspected my desk, he gave me a patronising look, as if to say, "How old are you? Don't you have any self-respect?" Whenever he's in a bad mood, it's always me that he takes it out on, but I just take it in my stride. I'm used to it now. When I got home, Mum asked me what I made of her new style cheesecake. I dithered a little before giving her an answer. It didn't stand out as being different from any of the others. In fact, I didn't think it was anything to write home about at all. However, I didn't tell her that, of course, although I hinted that it didn't come up to scratch when I asked her when she was going to make her old-style cheesecake again. 25th of September. Today, our team, Stockton United, had a footballer match against Rockford Rovers, our rival team from the next village. Last time we played them, we lost 10-0, but this time we had a couple of new players, and it was feasible that we could at least put up a fight. However, we came off rather badly, and this time we lost 12-2. Our captain tried to put it down to bad luck, saying we got 2 goals and that's not to be sniffed at. The manager, on the other hand, really turned on us, saying, "It never struck me how bad you were until today. I've got a few ideas in the pipeline which are going to revolutionise this team and pave the way for future boys to be proud to put on a Stockton United shirt. We're starting from scratch. That's the best way of sorting out this team's problems." I suppose he's right. To tell the truth, we're not a patch on the team we used to be, but that may be because we've all put on so much weight. This is one of the drawbacks of growing up. Lawyer and client.
Good morning, Howard.
Hello, Richard. How are things?
At home, everything's fine, but in the office, it's all upside down.
Oh, how come?
Well, basically, I've fallen out with my partners.
Over anything in particular?
Well, yes, quite a few things, actually.
Just before you continue, Lisa, can you put the kettle on? I'm sure Howard would like a cup of tea.
Oh, thank you, I'd love one. Anyway, the first thing is we've all had to fork out for this new computer system we've had installed, and I wasn't even consulted. I think we could easily have made do with the old one. Secondly, their plans for the future of the company don't fit in with mine at all. I think that during the slump in property prices, we should be making alternative investments. Not one of the schemes that they thought of has come off, and their excuses are always the same, i.e. we're going through a bad patch.
And what's your turnover been like this year?
I can't tell you off the top of my head, but I know it's nothing to write home about. You see, I never get to see the accounts. I'm only given menial tasks to carry out, and if I ask to do something else, I'm told that I'm always trying to get my own way. However, the worst thing I have to put up with is that at least two of my partners, John and Trevor, are always putting me down in front of the staff. I won't stand for that any longer.
So you want to split from the partnership?
Yes, most of us do.
Well, I'll have to go through your partnership agreement to see what you can get out of it, but I can tell you that there is a new Partnership Act which will be difficult to get round.
Can't we just divide everything equally?
That may not be feasible. It will turn on the partnership agreement and the way it's been interpreted. Do you think there's any possibility of patching everything up?
Not as far as I'm concerned. However, the senior partner, Peter Smith, has sat on the fence throughout this issue, and he doesn't want to make anything out of the rows we've been having.
Right, OK. I think we've gone as far as we can today. How about next week? I can probably fit you in on Tuesday at 11 a.m.
Let me put that down in my diary.
Chapter 9 in use. Two old friends walking in the park. Come along, get a move on.
Hang on a minute. Remember, I'm not as young as you. My legs won't stand up to much more punishment. Do you know, I've just been thinking about the first time I came to this park. I was about 17 and I was due to meet a pretty young girl called Cynthia at the entrance. She stood me up.
How long did you wait?
Oh, ages. She never turned up, but I was prepared to put it down to a one-off incident. Maybe I got the time wrong. Anyway, I was willing to give her another chance, so we made a further arrangement. I packed up from work at about 5 o'clock and realised I was looking rather scruffy, so I went home and changed. This time I arranged to meet her in town because she said she fancied going for a coffee. What I didn't expect was for her to bring her Alsatian dog with her. I must admit I was rather stuck for words. She said, "I hope you don't mind, but I brought my dog Jason along with me. Wherever I go, he goes." I made no comment, but couldn't help noticing that the dog was showing me his lethal teeth. Before I had a chance to say hello, he went for me and then started barking relentlessly. Meanwhile, my date just stood by and laughed. I threatened to sue her for owning a dangerous dog, and she rather bluntly said, "Nothing you say would ever stand up in court. You're a fool. It stands out a mile. It's a good job I'm thick-skinned."
And that, I presume, was the end of a beautiful relationship.
Of course, but I could never quite wipe her out from my memory whenever I came to this park.
I remember conning my dad into taking me here. I told him that there were beautiful flowers and trees in the park, but what I really wanted was for him to help me fly my kite. You see, I thought he could fill me in as to what it entailed. The kite took off like a rocket, but then it began to drift across the sky like a lonely bird. Then suddenly, on the spur of the moment, the kite decided to fly towards the trees, where of course it got stuck. My dad looked at me and then the trees, and at me again. I didn't cotton on. Then it dawned on me that he was expecting me to climb the tree to release the kite. My dad said he would stand by in case I fell. I didn't know whether or not he was joking. I had learned from my mother to take everything my dad said with a pinch of salt, but this time he was serious. He warned me to steer clear of the little branches that would break if I trod on them. I was, to say the least, somewhat daunted by the task I was being forced to take on. I had dropped out of physical training classes some time ago, and climbing wasn't one of the activities I usually went in for. Nevertheless, I had to go. I went for what I reckoned was the easiest route, and got to the branch which was holding the kite. I carefully slid myself forward until I reached a position where I thought I could get at it. I was wrong. I completely missed the kite, slipped and pulled the branch down. This fortunately released the kite. My father stood by his word and was ready to catch me, but he wasn't prepared to receive the kite, which came crashing down on his head. I cracked up laughing and nearly fell off the tree. The kite was damaged beyond repair, and my father realised that coming to the park with his young son had been a real eye-opener for him. Two colleagues at work.
Do you know what, Linda? I just can't seem to get down to work today. I've just taken down this letter the boss wants me to get off, and every time I try to concentrate, I just drift off.
Maybe you've got something else on your mind.
What are you getting at?
Oh, come on, own up. Who is he?
Well, if you must know, I have met someone, actually. His name's Tony.
What's he like?
To be honest, he's not the type I usually go for.
What do you mean?
He's quite academic and not very business-minded. He works for a charity that aims to wipe out starvation in the Third World by the end of the century. He says we must help the poorer countries stand up to the exploitation of their land by the West and,
You're drifting again. I don't want to know his politics. Sorry to be blunt. But is he good looking?
Oh, yes, certainly. Your friend Wendy will vouch for that.
Wendy? When has she met him?
Well, Tony invited me to the opera last week, which meant that I had to leave work early. So I asked Wendy to fill in for me for the rest of the day. He came to the office to pick me up and she saw him then.
I'll have to speak to her then. I'm sure she'll fill me in on all the interesting details.
Actually, our relationship has really taken off in a big way. He's taking me to a French restaurant in the city centre on Saturday.
Oh, you're bound to get ripped off there. Anyway, I would have thought that it would be against his principles to splash out on expensive meals. You know, in the long run, I can't see this relationship working at all.
Oh, I catch your drift. You're jealous.
How can you accuse me of jealousy when I have stood by you all these years?
Pack it in, you two. Doesn't anyone do any work round here?